This morning we're going to start off with a session on women on the job. And those of you who are not women, please share this information with any women you know. Please. As I told you all, I just had a baby 2 months ago, and I had a few experiences with my first child and my second child, which I want to share with you, regarding how to share the information with a boss and how to relate with your coworkers when you're not feeling your best. So when you're planning a family, you might think to yourself, well, I want to share this information with my coworkers and my boss. Make sure that I'm kind of pausing here because this is a very delicate situation because a lot of women have trouble getting pregnant. And I've seen some women share information with their boss beforehand that they want to have a child, and the coworkers start asking them questions about the baby, how's it going? And it's not good. The best thing to do with work and having a baby is to keep quiet about it. Don't share any of the information, it is your business. And don't tell anybody you work with until you are about 3 months pregnant. This is very difficult because the first 3 months of you being pregnant, you're going to be nauseous possibly. You're going to feel awful. And you're going to have your boss probably take you aside and say, you're not really performing well. Can you tell me what's wrong? You can't tell him or her what's wrong. Sometimes people are very intuitive and they'll be able to tell. But oftentimes you just have to suck it up. And really, you're going to be exhausted. You know, you're going to have to drink a little extra coffee. You're going to have to try to work harder. Because in the first 3 months, you can have a miscarriage. That's the most likely time to have a miscarriage. You can't tell your coworkers you're pregnant because that might happen. And there are just so many ramifications, so just wait. Once you hit about 3 or 4 months, it's usually considered that your pregnancy is likely to continue. At this point, don't tell everybody in the lunchroom that you are pregnant. Go to your boss. Tell them very politely, I'm interested in staying in this job. I'm pregnant, and I'd like to work with you on my options. And when you start the dialogue, be very open to shock from your boss. I had my boss say, oh my God, you're pregnant, I can't deal with you leaving for 2 months. And
because that's immediately the most important thing.
Right. It's not the thought, oh my God, you are going through a crazy transformation.
My God, I have a deliverable.
Right. It's absolutely true. And it's kind of mind-blowing, but just keep your cool. And if you ever get into a managerial position, just be open-minded. It is true that most women, I think, when they're working and they find out they're pregnant, they don't know what they're going to do if it's their first child. They don't know if they're going to continue working or they're going to quit. So if you ever become a manager, you have to keep that in mind. Don't tell them that you think they might ever leave. But it's just a very delicate situation, but there has to be a lot of respect involved. Just keep your options open. There are a lot of things to consider when it comes to pregnancy leave. You have to think about, can I afford to leave the company? Or can I find childcare in time? You do, in a city like Seattle, have to find childcare months and months in advance if you want to have a full-time job. You have to start interviewing nannies. And it's a whole boatload of work, and you just have to get your ducks in a row. And your boss is more than likely willing to work with you and will tell you all the policies, send you to HR. You'll start negotiating for pregnancy leave at some point. And it's just like any negotiation. You have to go in knowing what you want. You have to find out what the industry standard is and start negotiating. Say, I want to have 3 months, and the company will say, well, we only give out 2 months. And then you can possibly say, well, I think I'm worth 3 months. Can I please have the extra month? I won't get paid. I just need that extra time. You could also start negotiating at that point with, time out of the office.
Sick leave is a substitute for it.
Sick leave. I'm thinking more along the lines of how valuable an extra day during the week is, working Monday through Thursday and working maybe an extra 2 hours each day.
Opting to do 410s is a great way to handle it.
Mm-hmm. Really good way. Another way is to say, I'd like to work 30 hours in the office, 10 at home, and just have flexibility like that. Because a lot of times you will not find any daycares that open before a certain hour or open after 5:30, You're going to have to deal with the fact that coworkers are going to think you're not working as hard. You won't be working as hard, but you're going to have to hopefully have built a dialogue and a reputation that this is a temporary thing and you'll bounce back at some point. I hope that Tara and Liz can vouch for the fact that they've seen me for the past 2 months go from 0 when I was giving birth to step, 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 step. It's 2 months later. I'm almost back to where I was, but I'm still not 100%.
Little mom brain still going on there. But yeah, there's a huge difference. And we had just started working with Lorraine just as she was going to start giving birth. And so, if you want to know the truth, a lot of our assumptions were based on her previous work. This wasn't friendship, okay? This is an assertion that we three work together well. Yeah, it's great that we have coffee and everything, but we work together. We're colleagues, okay? And if Liz and I didn't think that Lorraine was eventually going to be able to pull her weight again and make up for lost time so that we could take a break for the extra slack we took in, we wouldn't have started working with her, frankly.
And
It
I'm
wouldn't
very,
have happened.
I'm very honored because they could have said, you're pregnant and we want to put on the seminar and that's only 2 months, after your baby. I don't know if we can do it. And they did my job for a while. And that is just a miracle to me because not every company would have people willing to take on the job and then give it up. That was an issue I had at the job I had for my first child. They wanted to find someone to do my job just for 2 months. And someone I worked with said, I don't want to do my job and your job for 2 months. I can't handle that. So you're likely to have people kind of resent you. But luckily you guys don't resent you.
Well, I'm not going to pretend that there weren't tense and upset moments, but
Yes.
again, we're colleagues. There's no butt hurt going on here, okay? When we were upset or frustrated over something, and this doesn't mean that we didn't screw up too on occasion. I mean, there's some stuff behind the scenes you haven't seen us drop the ball on because we're very good at BS, right? But there's a communication that's happening here at all times, and we all are able to say, I'm sorry, I screwed up.
Mhm.
Or, can you pick this up for me? Can you get it rolling for me? I'm not going to meet this deadline, I need some help. And if you can't do that, if you can't say, I'm not going to meet this deadline, I need some help, you're going to have people way more pissed off. If you show up at the
Yes.
office on Monday morning and go, I didn't get it done over the weekend, if that makes sense, all right? Because everybody's depending on you to do your job, and they're depending on you to get done what you need to get done. And whether it's you or someone else, it needs to get done. So suck it up and ask for help, because you're holding the entire office up if you don't get your deliverables in.
I want to point out, too, that pregnancy isn't the only time that things go wrong.
Yeah.
You could get sick for a couple of months. It happens. You could get mono. Have you ever had mono?
Yeah.
I was sick earlier this week, leading up to the seminar. I did hardly anything this week. I am embarrassed to say. These guys took up the slack for me. It happens.
It does happen. Not just a temporary sickness. You could work with someone who has a disability that they didn't tell you about when you first met them. And sometimes things will flare up and you take the extra time to help them out.
Last week, I think I had 3 days where I didn't do anything. I laid on the couch. That was it. I busted my back up. We went on errands for this seminar, and I picked up and lifted too much stuff, and I wrecked the hell out of my back. And for the next 3 days, I was a wreck. Laid flat, ice heat, sleep, ice heat, sleep, and that was it. And I had to email them and go, look, I'm not going to get stuffed all the time. So I think where some of the frustration and upset comes in is 3 days does not equal 2 months. And a lot of guys can comprehend and understand the flu for 3 days. And they're fine with taking up that slack. They look down the barrel of 2 months of doing somebody else's job, and all of a sudden, the notion of working with someone with an hourglass figure just isn't appealing anymore.
Right.
All right.
Right. And it's possible that you might have to cut back your own expectations. For example, I remember when I first met Tarah, she said she was looking for a front-end developer. And my first impulse was, I can do that, I can do that. Oh, no, I can't. And Tarah said, no, I can't have you. And it was very wise of you to say that, because I wouldn't have had the time to dedicate. It was a startup, right?
Oh, the thing, the FISMIT thing.
Oh.
Exactly, yeah. When we were
Yeah.
talking about it, I said we need a front-end designer and developer, you know, and I said, is this something you're even going to be able to contemplate doing 60 hours a week on? And she went,
Right. I'm not willing to work a startup type schedule. So, you know, you just got to work with that, but we'll work on this part. And it's very important to know what you're capable of and be honest at all times. And if you realize that you can't do something, don't just shove it under the carpet. You just be honest and say, I can't do it anymore. You know, I'd like to still help you. I'd like to be involved, but, you know, I can't do what you wanted me to do anymore. How can we keep this connection together still? Or if you even wind up having to leave, you know, just always stay on the good side. Don't burn any bridges. You never know when you'll meet these people again, or when you'll need a recommendation, or they'll be on LinkedIn, they'll post something and you'll say, hey, I'm interested in that position, you know?
and out of guilt at the fact that they totally edged you out of your previous job, they will help you get a new one. I'm not saying it's the nicest thing that's ever happened on the face of the planet, but I've had people edge me out of positions before and out of guilt help me get new ones. So, look, humans are humans. We're afraid, we're tired a lot, we're sick. How much time do you spend thinking about, I mean, how much time last night, all night long, did you spend thinking about the kind of night I was having, whether or not I was having prime rib or the salmon? You know, you're not thinking about me, okay? You're thinking about you, and you're thinking about the fact that you're tired and you're not gonna get a lot of sleep last night. How many people in here care how much sleep I had last night? Okay?
Yeah.
You guys are really nice.
Yeah.
I did think that you probably don't sleep a lot.
No, not really, no. Good concealer, right here. But you're not thinking about me, you're thinking about you. And what you think of is exactly that. You think, oh my God, I can't handle hiring somebody for 2 months.
Mm-hmm.
Not the joy of human life, not so much.
Right, exactly. More women on the job issues. As we discussed, you guys are all wearing nice work attire. If you're a woman and you decide to wear stiletto heels, make sure, you look good too, Lonnie, make sure that you're comfortable, because I don't think people will sympathize very much with you if you wear something uncomfortable and then you're complaining about it, or you just say, oh, my feet are so tired, they're killing me, I can't go to the meeting. Like, no, you can't do that, right?
It's very high school.
Yeah. Well, we know people who act like they're in high school.
Before we get off of the topic of pregnancy, can I do a little bit about the
Of
federal
course.
work? Okay. So do you guys know about the case that was just instated against Walmart for firing several of their pregnant workers for on-the-job requests for accommodation? Have any of you guys heard about that case? Okay, very recently, understand Walmart did something very, very legal. They fired a pregnant worker for carrying water bottles around and a portable stool so that she could sit down and get her ankles up. Okay? Totally legal. The ethics of it are not in question here. The question that, especially that any lawyer will ever tell you, is not whether or not it was right or wrong. They're going to say, is it against the law, and can I prove you were harmed by it? So those workers have no, I mean, it's swell that they filed a case. I'm sure that they may be looking to try to guilt the corporation out of some money because of the bad publicity, but the truth is that what Walmart did was totally legal. The Pregnant Workers Fairness Act was, I think, passed in 1978. And this act provides protection versus discrimination against pregnant workers. And discrimination is very, very different than requiring accommodation, okay? Requiring accommodation is something that happens under the Americans with Disabilities Act. Ask me how I know about every level of the Americans with Disabilities Act. Don't know so much about the pregnancy fairness thing, okay?
The only thing I'll tell you is pregnancy is considered a disability when you're collecting insurance, which I think is
Yes.
strange.
For insurance purposes, but under the Pregnancy Workers Fairness Act, that only protects you against losing your job for being pregnant, okay? It doesn't provide for protection versus someone not promoting you because you're pregnant. It does not force your company to provide reasonable accommodation for you in any way. The only thing it does is keep you from losing your job, which means that If you require accommodation to do your job, like carrying a water bottle around, like needing more frequent bathroom breaks if you are a fast food worker, you can be fired because you're not doing your job, quite frankly, okay? This is legal. There's a bill going through Congress right now, hopefully going through Congress right now, that's going to provide for some accommodations, but understand that if you ask, like Lorraine does, when she's had to before, can I have these extra couple of days? If she says, I really need to telecommute, and the boss says, I'm sorry, I can't do that, and he starts looking at her performance and going, man, you're kind of sucking over the last couple of weeks. You're writing up, I'm giving you a write-up now, you got one more week to the next write-up, you're out of here. You didn't do your job.
Right. Oh, I want to talk about accommodations very briefly. Not just during the time of being pregnant, after you go back to work, if you're breastfeeding, you're going to have to express your milk. And in times past, you've had to do it in the bathroom. And it makes you feel very low to have to do that. And who's respecting me? Why am I having to do this in the bathroom? A lot of companies have started providing rooms where you can express breast milk on your own.
Microsoft has nice new mother rooms in every building.
Right.
I've seen so far.
So does Google.
And it's nobody's business but your own. You just talk about it with your boss. Make sure you take the time you need to. It is possible that if this law is true, maybe some companies would say, we can't provide this for you. I think only, to be honest, good companies provide these rooms. But it doesn't hurt to ask, but don't expect to have special treatment for this type of issue.
You are totally reliant on the boss and the colleagues that you've acquired for yourself for any accommodations and any slack that you need taken up. This is one of the reasons why we're teaching you not just how to get jobs, but get along with people, how to handle being on the job, because these people, you depend on these people. They'll be your network. The people you just started a company with yesterday, you're going to know those people for a long time. If you are not already friended to them on LinkedIn, open your laptops, all right? You have a network now, and these are the people that are going to help you out. If they don't help you out, you can be legally fired for being pregnant. It's not for being pregnant, it's for not doing your job because you're pregnant. I get fired for not doing my job because I'm a redhead. You can get fired in the state of Washington because they don't like your face. You can get not hired in the state of Washington because they don't like your face. I can be fired for being disabled and not doing my job. Okay? You can't expect to have a job, not do it, get paid, and get kept around regardless of what your status is. The only thing that the Americans with Disabilities Act does is provides for companies of a certain level of employment to provide reasonable accommodation. And reasonable accommodation can sometimes be pretty damn unreasonable, honestly. I mean, I'm not going to go into some of the stories because I'm going to get sued, but sometimes you will have a very difficult time getting what you need out of these companies and getting what you need out of your boss and your colleagues. And if you don't have relationships with the people that you are working with, you're not only not going to get it, you're going to get fired, and it's going to be legal. Okay?
Yes?
What is the level of company that is required to even try to provide?
I think we talked about it a little bit yesterday. 50 is small business. So, like I said yesterday, if you have fewer than 50 employees and no elevator, I probably can't work for you.
I'll be honest, I think the
What do you
same
think?
rules apply to pregnancy. I'm not a
Yes.
lawyer, but I'm pretty sure that you get certain benefits if your company is greater than 50 people. If it's a small company, they possibly could fire you as soon as they find out you're pregnant because you're not federally protected.
Right. And it's legal.
Oh, as an aside to that, everybody knows about the law that was just passed in Seattle.
What?
Everybody gets sick leave. That is a company with 5 or more employees, and that includes illegal aliens, temporary employees. It includes everybody but contractors, who are apparently lower than illegal immigrants. So if you are a contractor and you own your own company, you don't get sick leave necessarily. They can still offer it to you.
Why? Because you're another company.
And that's only the city of Seattle. It's not over here.
Do you guys understand the legality behind why only contractors are not getting sick leave? Do you understand that it's because you're not a person, you're a company? You're a corporation. In that a corporation is a legal entity, you are that legal entity providing a service.
You can give yourself sick leave.
I thought
It's not
corporations
you.
were people.
People now.
Not on a city level, but yes, so this is the legality, the legal fiction that lets you do this, that lets companies hire people for a set of skills and then dismiss them because you're hiring a company to provide a service, not a person to provide a service.
Oh, and by the way, if you telecommute from home and you live in the city of Seattle, that covers you.
Really?
Unless you're a contractor. Any business in the city of Seattle.
Oh, really quick, Liz brought up the fact that I didn't talk about interviewing while you're pregnant. And whether you're male or female, if you were on a team and you saw someone pregnant, would you say congratulations to them?
There is one right answer to this question.
As a guy, you never acknowledge that a woman's pregnant.
Until she opens her mouth and says, say, I'm gonna have a baby in a month, and you go, I
And
never
you don't
noticed
say
a
you're
baby."
gonna have a baby.
You look so svelte.
If at any point you say you're pregnant in the interview, they can discriminate against you.
Yes.
If you are 9 months pregnant and interviewing, they have to pretend that they're only looking from the neck up, and they don't know anything about what's going on.
You weren't a good fit for the team at this time.
Right. You do not have to reveal you're pregnant when you're interviewing, even if you're showing. Don't do it. And in many cases, sometimes you will find someone who would have hired you if they were blind to the fact that you were pregnant. As soon as you reveal it, they have to reveal it to HR and other people in the company, and that's where problems arise. Just don't mention it, and you might get the job.
You do have to mention it, just not during the interview. When you go in for your
Your first
initial
day.
meeting and you're talking to HR and
Correct.
signing all the documents, that's when you bring it up.
Liz made a good point.
After you've negotiated the
Right.
salary.
Don't even talk about it when you're negotiating. After you've gotten the offer, actually, you reveal you're pregnant, then they make accommodations for you.
No,
But you
not
have-
even after
Yeah,
you've
it's
signed the
when you're-
paperwork.
yeah, you
Signing
sign
the
the paperwork
After
in
the-
HR.
After you have the contract in hand, then you.
I never actually had an interview while pregnant, but that is the majority of what I've heard and read about being pregnant and
And by the
interviewing.
way, if you want pregnancy leave, you do have to tell your boss. You can't go deliver the baby and then go back to your boss and say, I need
Yes.
pregnancy leave.
You have to notify your, what is it, with 3 months notification for a delivery date?
I think
something
so.
like that?
It's different in different states. So if you're not working in Washington, look it up.
State law often overrides federal law, and local law will
It's
often
kinda
override
confusing.
all else. So do not just know the federal law. The state of Washington may have very different rules than the federal rules that provide for a company to fire a worker for taking too many bathroom breaks. Individual states can enact protections that don't exist in other states, okay?
And this is actually where women on the job would try to find other women on the job, if there are any, and talk to them about it. I had a woman at the company I worked for, she got pregnant while I was 6 months pregnant, and while she hadn't even told her boss yet, and she asked me about what I had done and what I had negotiated. And I had no problem sharing that. She was completely clueless, and she didn't know what to do. So, network, talk to everybody you can. You never know when you'll need them.
When you were talking initially, I had a couple questions.
Mhm.
What do you do if someone is intuitive and they ask and you are pregnant?
That is an interesting point. What would I do if I was pregnant?
They don't ask. They say, you're pregnant, aren't you?
I
Wait, can you repeat the question one more time?
Well, Lorraine had said, some people can be very intuitive. I mean, you're sick for 3 months and,
Right.
The coworkers will ask you.
Well, yeah, you're walking around with club soda and a
Yeah.
packet of saltines and pork in the back
Right,
for 15
right.
minutes.
You have to be a detective, so.
I would think.
Recommendation.
Dardia, I'm a hiker.
What's
I'm
your
something like that.
recommendation?
The Mona Lisa smile. You know that's what they supposedly have figured out that smile is about?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes,
nice.
yes.
Uh-huh.
So you give them the Mona Lisa smile.
Because I don't think I would be able to just say I cannot reveal that or something like that. That's
If
not.
they make
That's
a
a
direct
yes.
statement.
Yeah.
And by the way, if you are someone's boss, you can't do that.
If they're smart, they'll already know this, that they can't ask.
So, yeah, your superiors can't, but your coworkers,
Coworkers are tricky,
they are, they're totally tricky.
and they
And
can
there's nothing that
suspect.
stops them from going and telling the boss. Or
That's
and
true.
this is not something you'll ever find out about, but a boss asking a more trusted coworker
Mm-hmm.
or friend to say, dude, I'm gonna can this person. Unless there's a reason for me not to can this person.
Oh, yeah.
Do you wanna find out what that is and let me know? That's gonna happen.
Oh yeah, when I got pregnant the first time, I started paperwork to buy a new house. I started leaving the work place weekly to go to the doctor, and I was sick looking, and I worked with 3 other women, and they knew I was pregnant within like a month. But they were just nice enough to not like my boss along with me, and they didn't tell him. So,
Did they know? Like, when you said they knew, but did they talk to you about it?
they never talked to me about it.
Okay.
Nobody talked to me. They just, oh, we knew it, all 3 of them, as soon as I told them. And I said, okay, why?
And when you finally do tell your boss, do you need to know what your plan is? Do you need to know if you're going to work
Yes.
or not work?
Yes.
Not because you need to know legally, but because you're not gonna walk into the person's office and say, oh my God, what do I do?
However,
That would be a bad idea.
Yeah, no, I get that. I just,
I'll
that's
let you
your
know.
plan, are you supposed to know, I
right,
guess?
I planned with my first child to work as soon as I got back, 3 months postpartum. And then I made the, in my mind, ethical decision to quit my job at 8.5 months because I realized I had this hormonal surge that I wanted to stay home with my baby. Because legally, if you say you're going to come back to work, they could pay you while you're on leave. And I didn't want to go there. I didn't want to have the resentment of, you told me you were coming back, why didn't you come back?
You killed 3 months worth of job search time for me, and now I'm stuck.
Exactly, and I wanted to I didn't want to burn any bridges, and that's why I did it. That was the biggest reason. I wanted my boss to still like me. And as a result, like 6 months afterwards, I brought the baby to that workplace, and everybody was very friendly to me. So, again, just always think about your networking. Think about, how you want to handle things and what the ramifications will be in the future for yourself.
And sometimes that mind change does come after the baby comes.
Yeah, that's
You
what
don't
I was
always know
gonna
at
say.
that time.
That's true, too.
You don't know it until it's here.
Right. It's quite possible that you will not realize.
Or that some kind of complication may have happened, you may be more ill than you knew would happen.
Or the baby might be. Mm-hmm.
The typical amount of time that women take is 3 months.
2 months.
2 months.
So I know that it's all been in the news that Marissa Mayer took a week off and headed straight back to work. Let's be honest, a woman who was the 20th employee at Google and is, I think, is an estimated somewhere around $400 million at this point. She can afford to have a cadre of gold-plated nannies waiting on her every whim and handling her pedicures.
I bet she's a wet nurse too.
I bet she.
I bet
If not two.
Oh yeah, if not 2. And she's not losing sleep. She's not
No.
staying up all night long. She's not doing anything other than possibly several times a day holding the baby and bonding and doing all the stuff she could and can and wants to do as a new mother. But she's not doing anything that she doesn't have to or want to do.
And that's great. I support that, but that's something someone in the elite can do. It's not most of us. It's something
Some
we
of
can
the
do.
local businesses are also very accommodating for this. I know the University of Washington in particular, I have
Very
seen
good.
where someone had a baby, came back a month later, her nanny was in her office with her. So she was able to be there and nurse as she needed to. She wasn't working exactly full time, but she was able to come back and continue working.
Okay, here's the thing that I want to tell you is you guys remember the interactions that Mike and I had yesterday, why he's a good friend of mine. And I told you before, some of the questions you want to ask about sexism, you can't really ask him because he doesn't care if you're a goat. He cares if you can do the work. So the greatest bosses out there are the ones that look at you and go, I don't care what you look like or how bad your hair is or where your nanny is sitting or what your office smells like if you change a kid. Are you going to deliver on time? Shut the door. I don't want to look at it. Give me your code. I don't care. That's the guy you want to work for. Okay?
Any final questions on pregnancy, nursing, anything like that?
Is there any information about Melissa Meyer? Because she was pregnant while she interviewed. So did they know? Did she just not tell them?
That has got to be the sign of the most insane desperation I've ever seen on the part of a corporation.
No, but they really
I've never
knew she was
seen.
pregnant.
They
They
knew
knew
she was pregnant, and they
It was a
hired
good
her
PR
as.
move.
It was
And she was
amazing.
Yes.
third or fifth?
She was
third-
7 months pregnant.
Third
So she was
CEO.
7 months pregnant. Okay, that was my
7
question.
months
How far along was she?
I think it was a
Like,
PR
it
move.
truly obvious? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, they
It
did,
had
That was
it
the
had to
big
be.
news. Is
the
that
announcement of
they
her
had-
pregnancy, though, was timed to some stock stuff, though.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, they hired her, I think, before they announced, so they may have known internally, but the shareholders didn't know until after she was in place and everything was going good. And she's
Absolutely.
going back to, I don't know if you mentioned, she's going back to work after
1
a
week.
week or 2 weeks.
Yeah.
One
Yeah.
the kid is probably in the building somewhere or across across the street.
It's-
Something like
she has a
that, yeah.
room, she has a dedicated new mother room next to her office.
Actually,
Google.
Google, it's Google, right?
No, yeah.
Yahoo, I'm sorry. I know
was
that,
brilliant.
I don't know the rules about Yahoo, but I know that Google actually has on-site everything. So I
Yeah.
wouldn't be surprised if Yahoo does too, and that's for all their employees.
Now they do.
She's coming from Google, she's gonna ask for the same thing.
Oh, yeah.
Right, right.
Anything she wants.
Yeah, yeah.
All right.
All right, so moving on, we're going to talk about socializing in the workplace. And I would just like everybody to raise your hand if food is important to you. I love food.
I'm getting croissant.
So, consequently, isn't lunch a big deal when you're at work? Isn't it one of the big things you look forward to every day? You know, you're in your groove, you've been working for 3 months on the same project, and you're just beginning to know your coworkers. Well, it's really important to go out and have lunch with your coworkers, right?
Absolutely.
And are you always going to agree on what to eat? No, probably not. Why don't you guys tell me some of the things you've had to endure when working with other guys and gals?
Do you know how many calories are in that?
Oh my God.
You eat meat? That is horrible for you.
They say that too.
Do you know how many carbs are in that?
Carbs. That's my favorite one ever. The girl who comes by, it's always like an admin or a secretary, assistant of some kind. Comes by, stares at all of us sitting around, because if you're on the dev team, shove the pizza in your face, at least a bite.
Well, no, not if you're celiac.
Don't do that. Yes, if that happens, just make sure that you say that you love mozzarella sticks or something. Anyway.
Okay, so what's the common theme among these phrases?
Yes.
What's the common theme? You're judging your coworkers when you say things like that.
Also, only chicks say them.
99% of the time.
Wow, you're being so,
There
she
are-
catches me when I make these absolute statements. But
There
it's true.
are raw vegan men.
Yes.
It's
Where?
it's not. Well, we're in Seattle.
We're in Seattle. Yeah. My dad lives in Colorado, and he's not bringing that average up on raw vegan men, I promise you.
Air quote men when she did that.
I did not. No. I know vegan men. I actually don't know any raw vegan men, but I know they exist, and I know vegan men.
And I worked with a bodybuilding guy who would only drink power drinks that smelled like cupcakes. So he would not have the pizza.
I've been that guy. Only it was chocolate.
True, the men that are like super physically fit, they
Yeah.
have really hardline diet.
And there are some seriously cut developers out there.
Oh yes.
Seriously.
I know one who works at a company that I probably shouldn't name, who has a junior world record in powerlifting.
Shredded completely.
Aren't they being referred
Every
to
vein,
as
dude.
coders or programmers?
That's not what programmers.
That's different.
There's some crossover there, but that's not what it means. So the important thing here to remember is think about what you're going to say about food before you say it, and make sure it's not judgmental. And anything judgmental is asking questions about the content of somebody's food. Unless you're asking, does that contain dairy because I'm allergic to dairy? If you have a special need like that, it's okay to talk about it. Just don't do it in a judgmental way. Because when you have an allergy specifically, it is very common for you to start looking at that food as bad and start thinking of it as bad. And I don't even like that anymore. Just don't let that out.
Something about the nature of food. We as humans, and this, all of the stuff we've been showing you about the way we physically move and talk and think, this is lizard brain stuff, right? Food is a communal activity, and it's part of a bonding experience that we share with people. I mean, when you want to figure out who you're going to mate with for the rest of your life, what's the first thing you do?
Go to
Go on a
dinner.
date. Yeah, find out whether or not you can stand the way they chew their food, right? Because that's the thing you're going to be doing with them for the rest of your life. You better be okay with it. Yeah, food is communal. This is team building, okay?
It totally
So-
is. I have to say that, you think it's such a little thing. I started bringing cookies and chocolates to the 6 guys I worked with in this room. And they loved it. And I wasn't just being like Betty Crocker or anything, because this guy, he went to Brazil to visit his girlfriend. He brought back bread from Brazil. And he was so excited to share it because he said, oh, this bread is so good. And it led to everybody starting to bring in food that they were excited about. And it was just something that we were bonding over, like Tarah said. It's just a primal thing to want to share food together.
Some of the greatest religions of the world, the basis of the rites and rituals that they experience are based around food. So is anybody in here Catholic maybe? You can share or not share if you want to, but the entire basis of Mass is the sharing of a table, okay? This is 2,000-year-old ritual, okay? We are wired to share food with each other and bring it back to our mates and, you know, like regurgitate it into the baby's mouth and stuff. This is, you know, this is the way that we bond as people. And so don't shut yourself away from that possibility, that experience. There will be a dislike of you and they won't even know why. Because it'll be so deep and so basic they won't understand it or put it into words. Even be conscious of it.
I have a couple notes about culture when it comes to that. If you go on a trip, bring back food for everyone. It will make them look forward to you taking a vacation. Instead of resenting you, they're happy because you brought them back something. Little candies or whatever.
This is called Pavlovian.
Yes, salivation when you walk back through the door. The jelly donuts.
If you walk into a company that doesn't have a culture of sharing food, it's a good idea to start inviting people to lunch with you. Look up a place to go eat first. Ask 1 or 2 people at a time, then see if you can make the group bigger. If you start this, the team will work better together. It really will.
Friday night or Friday afternoon team lunches is a big thing at a lot of different companies that I can think of. Startups, major companies, sections of teams, all over the place.
And if
And-
you,
Sorry.
if you just stand up for someone who can't eat something, like, oh, I know Sarah can't have that, guys, we really should think of something else. That person will remember that you stood up for them, and they will be grateful.
Yes.
Observation. So we went out last night, we went to lunch, and you even hear about the deals made on the golf course. You know, at a high level, people have to learn how to play golf. I mean, that's what I hear. So what's interesting about the common theme of all 3 of these elements is you're not on the workplace anymore. I'm no longer within the confines of where I'm going to feel as legally obligated as I would if we were having a drink after work. So you're going to get potentially a more real story from people around you because they're no longer at work.
Remember some of the conversations we were having at lunch yesterday? A couple people at my table, I pointed out, I'm judging you right now. You feel happy and comfortable and you're talking to me, you're sharing your whole damn life story and I'm looking at you going, well, I'm not hiring your ass. So, and I'm telling you these things now saying, you realize I'm busy judging you right now and calling your attention to the fact that this is important. During the interview, during work, the work week, the things they remember are the times that they spend with you. And you're going to have this one-on-one time with them. That's going to be what they're going to bring away from the relationship with you. And if you have made them angry or frustrated them or mocked their food or their choices, that's not necessarily going to be the greatest way to build rapport.
And not just food choices. One of the points I wanted to make was when you're on the job, try to be interested in what websites and books and things that people are interested in, because it's not just the job. If someone's coding in Java or C++, they may regularly go to a certain site that has awesome tutorials and try to find that stuff out. Try to find out what kind of books maybe have interesting points about new ways to code modules or build servers that might apply. And then you have a dialogue. And it's not just about, oh, we're on this project together and we're going to work together and that's all we're going to talk about.
It's about
That's unnatural.
videos on YouTube is what it's about. You pass around by IM.
All right. At this point, I'd like to introduce Lonnie. She is a senior SQL evangelist, and she's going to speak on handling alternative gender identities, whether yours or others.
Lonnie Bauer, thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure.
Thank you for coming.
I have this whole thing written for you guys.
Very awesome. All right, Microsoft.
So it's funny, before you all got here, I said how nervous I am to be here because I'm talking about myself, and yet I go around the world and talk about the projects that I work on, everything technical, and it's so easy and I'm not nervous. But yeah, I'm nervous to be here. When I was 5, my mother sent me from New York City to Los Angeles to live with my father. I was given the option of one toy, and I chose a calculator. And, you know, I did, a calculator with the hard buttons. They didn't have iPads back then. And I laugh about it now, but choosing that makes so much of my life make sense. And later, it was the summer of 1983. I sat in the movie theater and I was mesmerized by this kid playing global thermonuclear war in war games. Yeah, and the entire ride home, I was like, shall we play a game? And you know, that's all I cared about. I was 9. I had no idea what thermonuclear war was, but I knew what the computer was that he was playing on. And I got home. Here's Joshua. Yeah, Joshua. He's Seattle-based too.
Yes.
So the best thing, see if you know this. So I pulled out my Atari 400.
Okay.
I attached the cassette player. I put in my basic 64 cartridge, and I spent hours, and I made my own program to do it. Shall we play a game? Yeah, 9 years old. Yeah, and you know, 7-year-olds can do this on an iPad now in about 5 minutes. But the biggest thrill about that was that my parents couldn't figure out my password. So,
I like
yeah.
to know that she wins.
No. Well, and then if I think about it and I go through my life quickly, in elementary school I excelled at math, so much so that I was pulled out of my 3rd grade class every single day and taken to the 6th grade class. Now it would be cool, but back then I was, you know, NERD, and it wasn't so cool. I was alienated by many of the students that I was in class with, and then from 3rd grade I went to 5th grade, so I skipped 4th. I was made fun of for that. Junior high and high school were even harder because I was smart, and as I grew up, it was more clear to me, as well as everyone around me, how different I was. And then when I was asked to speak here today, I kind of questioned, you know, and we had a conversation about this. I said, I don't know if I'm the right person for this. You know, they were looking for someone who identified as L, B, G, or T to come in and talk about issues. And if I think about the issues I faced more issues of sexism than I have any discrimination because of my sexual orientation. I've had a lot of jobs before landing at Microsoft, so right now I'm at Microsoft. In July I started a new role, so I'm now program manager. I'm on the SQL Server core engineering team, which, you know, that to me is the coolest thing ever. In my jobs, I was an intern at E-Entertainment. I then went back and was a SQL Server DBA. Because of my work as an intern, they offered me the job without question and said, you're gonna need to learn on the job. It's a temporary position, but our DBA just walked off, so if you can handle it, it's yours. And I taught myself on the job and I kept it. And then SQL became my life. So E-Entertainment, I worked at City Search, which is, you know, City Search, Ticketmaster, they're kind of combined, and Evite. I went back to E. I spent a couple years in Philadelphia working, again, with SQL for a medication management company that caters to hospice patients. But these companies are either technology or entertainment focused, so there's no bias really there. If I could do the job, I do the job. They don't care what I look like. But if I do think back, shortly after college, I accepted a position as a software verification engineer for an aerospace company. My role was to make sure that the braking systems for regional jets, the hardware spoke to the software correctly. Basically, if a jet landed, it was my job to make sure the jet would stop. It was super fascinating to me, super nerdy. But the biggest thing that stood out for me was I was so miserable in that job because there was absolutely no diversity. Every single person I worked with was, well, I wouldn't say every single, but I would say 99% was older, white male. And I can't tell you how many times I was asked if I had a boyfriend or a husband, and no matter what my response was, it could be a day later or a week later, they would ask me again. I mean, look at me. I made a complaint to HR, and I was pulled into the vice president's office. I said, there's not enough diversity here. I think something should be done about it. And he asked me, he said, so would casual dress on Fridays make it better for you? And, you know, yeah. And I laughed, and, you know, I walked out, and I called my dad and cried. And he said, life's not worth being that miserable. And I never went back, ever. So that's really the only thing I can think of around sexual orientation discrimination. Before actual career work, I worked at Lady Foot Locker, and I remember the district manager came in and said that I dressed better than her brother, And I was like, oh, thanks. But everything else has been sexism. There was a time in a previous role, I hired someone to come in and deliver training that there are certain training offerings at Microsoft you have to be certified for, and I wasn't certified for it, and I was in a position where I had a budget and I could do things like this. And I walked into the room before the class started, and I asked the gentleman giving the training, do you need anything? And he had no idea that I was the person who hired him, nor at the point was it really relevant. Well, he didn't ask me for coffee, but he told me that the Xerox machine was broken, and he asked me if I could go fix it. And I had half a mind to ask him if his fingers were broken, but I kept my mouth shut, and it was just shocking. There was a time, and this was about 1.5 years ago, so pretty recent, that I had worked with a colleague for over a year. We have the same exact title, and we were assigned to work on a new Microsoft partner together. And I scheduled a meeting with him because he had already worked with them, and I wanted to understand more about the project and, the infrastructure of everything and what I would be responsible for. And when he walked into the meeting, after working with me for a year, he asked me why it mattered what the project was, because all I needed to understand was how to take notes. Yeah. Wow. So I fixed that. How? Oh, I want to know. I'm usually extremely polite and kind to everyone I work with. I had a few choice words, and I made it clear to him that really on the project, my work was more important than what he was doing. He oversaw the partnership, and I was doing all the technical work with them. So had I not been there, he wouldn't get his checkbox marked at the end of the year. So things changed, 20 minutes after we met.
So you were just directly to him. You didn't bring it outside or talk to HR or talk to supervisor.
No,
you just sent it to him.
Yeah, I have not needed to go to HR.
Okay.
I'm pretty vocal.
Yeah.
I'm pretty good at standing up for myself. I could probably spend hours talking to you about all the issues I went through growing up and all the hatred I went through then. And it made me pretty tough now, so I don't really put up with a lot. I'm great at what I do, and that speaks for itself.
Yeah.
So there was a time in Austria that I went to speak about one of the benchmarks I did, and I went to the conference room or the speaking room prior to, and I was stopped, and I was told that only the speakers could go in early. And I said, no, I am the speaker, and my name is Lonnie, which if you look at every Microsoft Lonnie, I'm the only female. And they called a manager to come over to verify I was who I said I was. And then in Berlin, I spoke with an Intel counterpart, so 2 women, speaking on a huge benchmark that we did, millions and millions of dollars worth of hardware. It was so much fun. And we were called prior to our session to ask us if we would do a second session, because the first one, the demand had gone over. And for both of the sessions we did, it was standing room only, and I'm still convinced it was because 2 women were speaking, because there wasn't a single woman in the audience. So really it was more because they could see them, or see her rather than me. And for years, landing the job at Microsoft was my dream. I interviewed in 2006, and I didn't get the job, and I asked, okay, what could I have done better? What do I need to do? And I was given a list. And I went home and I studied. I automated a lot of my work so that I can spend time studying to get back into Microsoft. I didn't take no as an answer. I didn't look at it because I was a woman or because I'm a lesbian. It just wasn't my time. And it's almost 5 years now, and I love my job. I've been out in every job I've had. I think looking how I look, it's impossible not to be out. Although I do still get questions of, oh, do you have a boyfriend? And I look around, are you are you talking to me? I expect people to treat me how I treat others. So yes, I'm in a male-dominated workforce. I'm either the only woman or one of very few women in every meeting I attend. Yeah, it's really fascinating. A lot of the times I find myself looking through the room, not really paying attention to what's being said in the meeting because I'm counting how many people and how many women, and I'm looking at the percentage, and it's never double digits. I think, the last 4.5 years at Microsoft have taught me a ton. I've learned about business acumen. I've learned about working with partners. I've learned fiscal responsibility. And this is all outside of the technical scope of my role or my roles. And I've had the privilege, or I've earned the opportunities to go all over the world to speak about things that I've worked on. And I've had a chance to work with the smartest people I've ever met in my life. And I stand out. I don't stand out as the kid who flew to California with a calculator or the kid who wrote the War Games application. I don't stand out as a woman, and I don't believe I stand out as a lesbian. I stand out because I'm a great engineer. So for all of you who are here, you're here to make one of your dreams come true, take another step, and I congratulate you on that because I really think nothing's impossible. So I thank you for having me.
Does anybody have any questions? We've got 20 minutes to ask Lonnie all the questions that we want to. And I totally am going to use my privilege right now and ask the first one. Thank you. Because I want to know this. I don't know if we talked a little bit about what happened during the Kickstarter. Some of the attention we got was very negative. Both sides were angry about what we were doing. Some women were deeply furious that we were essentially accepting the status quo as opposed to burning the system down and saying, look, this is a system, we're going to work within it to help individual women get better at it. And then we've got guys going, if they were going to be ever any good, they already would be. What are you doing here? So, and even one or two women joining in on that side. So here is my question for you. You, some other people that I know, you make your own rules, all right? And the only way that you get to make your own rules is to be that good. I want everybody in here to be that good, but my question is this. Is it enough for individuals to be that good, or does the system itself need to change in some fundamental way through a major lawsuit, through formation of companies that are solely, women in the C-suite? Does the system need to change, or can they change it from inside the system?
I think it's a combination of both. If I look at what's on the ballot, and I don't want to get political at all,
I've seen some.
but there's marriage equality on the ballot now. Times have changed so much, and yet they haven't. If I could just talk quickly about what I do outside of work. Recently I interviewed I didn't interview to accept a position. I was one of the interviewers for the GSBA Scholarship Fund, which is Greater Seattle Business Association, and they are like a gay chamber of commerce, and they have a scholarship for gay and lesbian, bisexual, trans, alliance, kids, high school students, or returning college students who have contributed to helping the world understand that pretty much everyone is equal. And it changed my life, so much so that I joined the steering committee. But what changed my life about it was I went into it thinking I was in high school, I graduated in '90, and things were terrible. It's 2012, things should be fantastic now. Kids should be able to say whatever they want. And reading the stories of these kids killed me.
It gets better.
Oh,
and
yeah, so I think the bigger companies are changing, and it's great. Microsoft has Gleam, which is the gay and lesbian employees at Microsoft. There are a million different aliases for it. You can sign up privately, you can sign up publicly. They have events that are, Microsoft pays for the events to take place. Microsoft donated thousands of dollars to the GSBA scholarship. So I think it's a combination. I made a statement in the aerospace company by not going back. In that time in my life, it was all I could do. I couldn't be treated that way.
they're lost out on you.
Yeah. So, and in terms of being that great, I beat myself up on a daily basis thinking I could be better. I sit in a room with, distinguished engineers who have been with Microsoft for 20 years and can reiterate lines of code that I don't even understand, and it shouldn't work like that because blah, 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 blah. And I think, wow, like, who are you? So I think it's a combination. Yeah.
Why don't you call on people that you want to answer?
Sure.
My partner Rachel.
Yes. Are you Stacy?
Sandy.
Sandy. Nice to meet you.
Me too. So yesterday we were talking about dress attire and interviews, and
Yeah.
She wore a vest yesterday, and I wear vests on occasions.
Mm-hmm.
Occasionally throw on a tie. I don't throw a tie for work, but if I was wearing a vest at an interview, I brought up my concern with an issue that's ongoing where I appreciate your comments yesterday, but I do constantly get assumed to be male. Like if I come out of the women's bathroom or go in,
I get it all the time.
Yeah, exactly. So,
don't know why.
and I want to say that in general, I don't have an issue. Like I'm really strong in my being when I wear, any kind of apprehension or discomfort that a guy feels in my company, that's their issue. It's just a job situation when you're trying to get that job. That's so it's like juggling. I think that's when the just the daily unsaid energy comes out to the surface. And I thought about this last night, like how do you, just staying true to yourself and in general just being comfortable in your being in an interview situation. It's so important because that's the person that you're going to be on the job. And so I really appreciated your comments yesterday. I don't think I can do pearls, but I will ponder something. And so I can just empathize. I appreciate your sharing with us. I think that the other piece I wanted to say is when you talk about I'm out. I think that's something I feel like I just need to state. That's just when people think about being in the workplace, it's important for people to realize when you say out, that's not like waving a flag. I think people take for granted their privilege, and when we say out, it's anybody can ask who you're dating, and I think people take for granted that somebody who's queer, as I identify myself, you never know what environment you're going to be in where somebody could feel whatever kind of energy around that. So I think that that's important too for people to keep in mind. In general, there's cultural orientation, etc. And then there's also the gender issue. Never presume to understand, or I should say know how somebody prefers to be identified.
Absolutely.
I identify as female, but I have several friends who identify as male and identify as other. And so I know it's a slippery slope and it's such a complex issue, but these are the things I think in general, just if you see your coworker as your coworker and move from there rather than trying to box people. And that's like when you talk about dietary and all the other things.
So I feel like, and very recently, I've been biased. I've assumed what my colleagues were going to think or say. I refuse to be anything but myself. It's funny, I asked several times, what should I wear? I'm dressed up for work. Like, I don't get any more dressed up than this other than, presenting at the Executive Briefing Center.
I told you to wear your flip-flops.
Well, I was going to stand behind a podium in shorts and a dress shirt and then just move to the side and say, like, this is what I wear to work.
It has nothing to do with your personality or
No, it doesn't.
This is
It doesn't.
civil engineers. They all wear shorts and flip-flops.
Yeah, I'm in shorts and a hoodie every day. And to be quite honest with you, for the position I'm in now, I interviewed dressed down from what I'm wearing right now. I'm not going to wear something special or different than who my person is just to get a job, because in my mind, they're hiring that person and that's not me. I don't wait for someone to ask. I just talk about my life. I have experienced negativity from people in their experience of being out. They assume that because of how they look that people are going to treat them a certain way, and I can't live like that. I'm fantastic. I'm funny and I'm nice and I'm smart. And if you can't get over the fact that I have short hair and I wear jeans, like it's not my problem. So I don't know if that helps.
I have potentially a great follow-up to this. So as an instructor at Seattle Central Community College, we have a great deal of diversity in our classrooms. And so one situation happened one time where very tall person, to me, obviously identifying as female, wearing a dress and pearls, etc. So very clearly, right? But we talked about the lizard brain. Well, my lizard brain didn't pick up female. My lizard brain, and what's interesting is if you're actually doing a lot of work, the lizard brain can kind of come out in terms, and it isn't like you're addressing the person. It's like you guys. So the references are sort of he versus she, guys. You know, and by the way, I use guys generically all over. So that to me means guys. I'm sort of decentralizing the whole aspect because I don't even care. It's not part of it. But if the lizard brain slips and someone were to be called a her when you identified as a him and a she when identified as a he, can you talk about that aspect? Because it's I've seen it be a burden in my classrooms.
Yeah, so I have started emails saying thank you guys, knowing there's one female on it, and I'll change it. I was in support when I started Microsoft, that's how I got in. And there was a kudos sent to my manager, and it said, I was shocked at the way she took control and was typing in the command prompt. For a woman, that was just shocking. For a woman to be able to, wow. But, I'm very careful with how I address people. I have been called him on many projects. Our Microsoft's Outlook system, our Exchange system, is hooked with employee pictures. So you can see, there's a picture of my face. I don't think my face is masculine enough. I don't know. I'm not looking at myself other than me, but where it says, oh, he can do that, and I reply and say she can do that, and it'll, go back and forth. And I don't let it go, but I'm also very careful with how I address people. In the last building, my last role that I was in, there was a person who was transitioning. And that was interesting. It was new for me to experience. I took it as a learning experience. I've never experienced, and I thought it was fascinating because here's this person who has lived so much of their life as one way, but feeling another way inside, and they work at a company that allows this to happen and celebrates it in a way and accepts it. And I don't judge anyone. So.
For people who go back and forth on the gender scale, and it does happen, is there I always thought the rule of thumb was to use the him or her that they're addressed as at the time. Is that generally appropriate?
I don't know if I'm the best person to answer that. If for someone transitioning, yeah, it's who it. I think it's more of what they want to be identified as at the time. Outside of work, I was at a happy hour event, and it was very crowded, and I was trying to tell my friend to move. I said, would you please move? She wants to get through. And it was a person who, to me, presented as female, and he turned to me and said, I prefer him. And I said, okay, you got it. And I said to my friend, I said, would you please move so he could get by? And I think it's what they want to, whatever the person.
The most impressive thing about that is not being flustered about it. Right. Taking it as total matter of fact.
Absolutely. I'm not perfect.
Sorry, dude.
Yeah, I make mistakes.
Go on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Dude. Just kidding.
Yeah.
Exactly. No
Do you
fluster. No
think
frustration.
you had to be better or the best at what you do in order to break through those barriers that you've experienced?
I know I'm very good at what I do, so I think that stands out on its own.
Do you think you could be where you are and be just good at it, or just, perfunctory?
So that's a tricky question because Microsoft is so competitive.
Yeah.
I would say no outside of everything that identifies me as a person. It's so competitive there. There's something they call calibration, and it happens on a monthly basis where every single person on a team is ranked in order, and that's how reviews are done. If you're in this chunk of numbers, you get this score. If you're in this chunk, and these people are asked to go find other positions. So I don't think it has anything to do with, no. I mean, I've been offered every job I've interviewed for, with the exception of one recently. And I was devastated, and the hiring manager came to my office and cried with me. And she gave me a list of pros and cons for me and the gentleman who was hired. And it was absolutely clear that he did not win for any other reason than his merit. And I just picked myself up, dusted myself off, and I found another position. And the one I have now is, for me, much better. Yes?
At an earlier time, but not that long ago, I worked at a company where most people were, pretty diversity conscious, but there was the one person who was maybe less. And I think that in general, maybe she was, sensitive to diversity or not against it, but the one, she had her one thing, and it in fact turned out to be transgendered. Now, I'm not transgendered, don't identify as that diverse, but I remember being really kind of disgusted by it.
Yeah.
And I think I handled it kind of badly, in large part because I was also leaving. And, I got kind of jerky about it even. But I don't know what the right way of handling something like that would be. As just somebody who doesn't want to listen to that.
Yeah. I think if you have a great relationship with your manager, going to your manager and talking about it would be a step. If you don't feel comfortable, I think going to HR is always so tricky, because there's always the fear that you're going to be identified as someone who's complaining about something, and then they find a way to get you out. I like to take those opportunities as teaching opportunities and kill them with kindness. And even if it's not something about me, I like to find ways to start a conversation and make it show that it's not abnormal and that it's not bad.
I mean, in this particular context, it wasn't like they were saying, "Oh, transgender people are gross." It wasn't anything like that.
Yeah.
It was subtle. It was just as subtle as any other conversation.
Sure, I have a perfect example maybe of that. Is I went to lunch with a colleague, and she was telling me about her niece who's 11 years old and how she's been playing soccer and changing the way she dresses. And she told her sister, "Why don't you send her to me for the summer so that she doesn't turn out that way?" And I thought about it, and at the time I was like, "Oh, okay." And then I went back to her and I said, "I'm really offended, because if you're talking about that way being how I turned out, I think I turned out pretty freaking great." And she apologized. She apologized for weeks, every time I saw her, and wrote me a really long email about how she didn't even realize what she was saying was so derogatory to me, and that she needed to open her mind up to the possibility that, this is a family member, and no matter what they choose or how they feel in life, that needs to be accepted.
Let's wrap this up really quickly, and let me say, before I do this, we've talked before about bawling because you have to go into work and just being in total tears. You can't handle it. And the toughness that it takes to handle not being in the position of default privilege, and the sense of humor and the toughness that you have to develop to do it, the reward is at the end of that path, if that helps. You're seeing a happy, healthy, well-adjusted person here. Liz and Lorraine and I are happy, we're healthy, we've made choices now that make us not have to bawl because we have to go into work, okay? So the reward at the end of having it tougher is, if you're making these choices to be happier, you end up a person who is thrilled to be you. I mean, you're awesome.
Life.
You're awesome, right? Especially
I have a fantastic
the calculator and the war games.
Yeah.
You saw a copy of that? Oh my God, okay. My husband would freak out on that one.
When I started thinking about it, I thought, where is my Atari? And I called, my parents don't know where it is. I told my entire family I was coming here to do this. I sent them the link, and everyone said, "Oh, that's fantastic." I have more support in my life now than I ever have.
Through honesty. and handling the toughness and getting out of the situation where you're bawling because you have to go into work. Don't do that. That's bad. So, but the reward is exactly one life, right? So your reward is you're happy and you're thrilled to be you at the end of the journey, and that's the reward for the toughness that you've got to take now, honestly. And I gotta be honest, it's been an honor to listen to you talk today. Thank you so much for doing this.
Oh, my
Ani.
pleasure. Thank you.
Oh my God, right? Ani Bauer, thank you so much.
Thank you to our Kickstarter backers, Michelle Thigpen, Annabelle Richard, Tech Liminal, and Adria Richards. I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank all of our Kickstarter backers. We couldn't have done this without you. Thank you.